All right, what's up? We are approaching the end of our shower renovation project, tiling a master bathroom shower. In previous videos, we put up cement backer board and, of course, waterproofed the heck out of it and tiled it like a true do-it-yourselfer. And we got to pretty much this point. So this video will take it to the next step. We're going to be grouting and sealing the grout. Now, in a previous video, I actually made a review of this specific grout called Ultra Color. This is the stuff that I'm working with. And overall, long story short, I highly recommend it if you want specifics and tips on how this stuff works. And it is fast drying. So again, I made a separate video on that. Search my channel for the Mopay Ultra Color review. Anyway, in this video, we're going to look at some tips for application no matter what kind of grout you are using. You can see I clean my grout lines really well, and these are some basic tools that I have. Again, this is the stuff that I'm working with. And just a general tip here, before you mix a batch of this stuff and go all in, no matter what kind of grout you're using, you know, brand and color and whatnot, make sure you do a test sample. I have a separate video out on how you can make a test sample batch before you invest a lot of money and time and potentially have a final product that doesn't dry the same color that you thought it would, or you have consistency issues or whatnot. So definitely mix up a batch. Now, I'm a texture kind of person, a consistency person, so I don't use exact ratios. I just want my grout to be kind of peanut buttery. You don't want it dripping off there. And of course, you don't want it clumpy. You want it just peanut buttery enough where it's considered workable, right? Watch the video here, check out the technique. You want it to be able to penetrate that gap, right? Whatever that gap is. Now, you're going to want to research, if you've never done this before, if you should use a sanded or unsanded grout. It depends on a lot of different things, but the primary thing is your joint, your gap, your joint. How wide is it? Now, this stuff that I'm using, it basically doesn't matter, which is partly why I chose it. It's got some great technology inside of it. Things that I don't completely understand. It is a fast drying, but I found a great workaround there in the review of this particular stuff. But basically, it doesn't matter. Long story short here, it doesn't matter how big the gaps are. I think it can fill up to 3/4 inch gap, and it can be applied to 1/16 or something ridiculous like that. Don't quote me on that. But anyway, this is really nice stuff to work with, in my opinion. But we won't get into too many details here. You can just kind of see just some general techniques and some application tips here. If you've never grouted before, it's pretty straightforward. You're going to want to YouTube search for, you know, how to grout for more specific information on this. But basically, you're going to want to push that stuff in with your float into the joints, into the gap there. You don't want to just make sure it just covers the surface, right? You actually want to see it kind of go inside the joint, and then you will wipe the excess away with your grout. And after that dries for, I don't know, anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes, kind of depending. You're going to want to read your instructions to see, you know, what the recommendation is. You'll take a wet sponge or a couple of sponges, and you're going to want to very methodically wipe away all that excess without disrupting the grout line that you just put down. And so that's the trick. The easy part, in my opinion, is applying the grout just like this, right? Push it in there and then kind of smooth it out with your float. It doesn't have to be perfect. The sponge will actually, your wet sponge that you'll put over there actually will make it really nice and finished look. And you'll see what I mean once you try that out. And again, if you've not done this before, you're going to want to practice, right? Mix up a little batch in your test sample and get a couple of excess tile or extra tiles and just practice a little bit. Make sure you are happy with your consistency of the grout. Make sure you're happy with the color of the grout. Make sure you understand, you know, how to apply it in a way that is penetrating into the gap, right? And then play around with the wet sponge a little bit. You can see I'm wiping it away, single passes, and then I try to switch the sponge over to a clean side. So you're not just, you know, spreading that stuff around. It's actually lifting it up, and then you move the sponge. Now, obviously, you can do it a little bit with the same side, but that's the general principle. Get a lot of the heavy stuff up first, and then come back and do single swipes only, switching that sponge, rotating that sponge around to the front and the back, and the ends, right, are all kind of clean edges of the sponge to help get that stuff up and get your grout line nice and finished. And the sponge should be not soaking wet. You don't want it dripping, but you definitely want it to be more than just damp, right? And you'll see what I mean. Because this is where you can really get that grout in the joint to a professional finished look, in my opinion. That's the tricky part, right? I mean, it's pretty straightforward. And of course, you're going to want to get all that haze off of there. And once it's dried, I like to take a paper towel and try to lift off as much haze as I can. But be careful. If you do this, don't hit that grout line. You're going to have to get the grout out or the wet sponge out and go over it again. But this is kind of what I did, and I think it worked really well. Now, I do have this extra little tool here, and I'll pop links down below for all the supplies and tools that you see in the description, as always. But this thing kind of has more of an aggressive scrubber on it. It helps lift up some of that haze. And I am going to grout around the custom shower niche, the Schulter trim here. And again, I'm working in small batches, so I'm grouting small batch, and then I'm letting that dry a little bit and coming back and wiping it up. Here's the dried stuff. You can see it dried a lighter color that pretty much matches the texture on the tile itself, which is what I was going for. Now in the shower, we've got this great big vertical line in the corner, and I am going to grout that really well. Make sure that is all covered, that grout is penetrating back behind there as much as possible, and then I can take my finger and kind of encourage it to go back there and smooth it out at the same time. And grout is not waterproof, by the way. It will take water at some point, so we are going to be sealing this in a later step within this video, so hang tight there. And of course, I have waterproofed behind this because tiling and grout is not actually waterproof. It's going to absorb through, not through the tile necessarily, but behind the tile. You'll get condensation, right? It depends if you have a steam shower. You're definitely going to want to waterproof with Redgard behind it or a polyurethane sheet. Not both, but something to protect. And that's another story for another day. And obviously you'll have to research how to do that. But I am going to be grouting as much as possible to discourage as much water as possible from kind of getting back in there, right? That's why I'm making that grout line nice and thick and smoothing it out. Transitioning it to the other grout lines, the horizontal ones. And this was kind of a pain in the butt, but I had never done it before. But not bad at all. Just kind of a hot mess. So you just throw on all the grout into the mosaic tile, work it in, and pretty much the same principle applies. Get all of it in there, and then take your wet sponge and get off all the excess. So this was a really fun part of the project. A lot of hard work up until this point. You can check out all those previous videos. We rebuilt the drain. We did lots of fun stuff. But this was really fun because you could actually start to see the tangible finished product, right? From the moment you tiled, obviously. But the grout just made things pop a little bit better. A little more obvious and a little bit more reward for all the work that was put into this shower. Hopefully it was worth it. I don't know. We want to enjoy it and obviously increase the resale value of the home whenever that may be. But yeah, it was worth it. I enjoy these kind of projects as always. Do-it-yourself home projects. Such a fun thing to be able to do and a curse at the same time, right? Lots of money spent, lots of stress thinking about it. But at the end of the day, it's rewarding and fun. Anyway, here I am finishing this up, and again, using that straight edge on a paper towel, careful not to disrupt that grout line, and trying to just lift up all that haze in single passes, pretty much single passes, and then folding it over a little bit. You want to just lift up all that stuff as it dries. In other words, you don't want that haze to dry on there permanently. And the Schulter kind of a fun word to say. The Schulter finish also will receive a grout line all the way down between the tile and the Schulter. And of course, you don't want to let this stuff dry on the finish. And that is pretty much it. Next, we'll take this sealant stuff. This is called an impregnator, I think. Strange word. But it penetrates into the grout and protects it, seals it. Now, this grout that I'm working with says you don't have to seal it, but I'm going to be that person and seal it anyway. Added layer of protection. And that's pretty much it. In the next video, we'll be doing the finishing touches, putting on the shower head and the shower handle, and also troubleshooting leaks. Yes, when I fired this baby up, we've got leaks. So all that to come. Be sure to subscribe for more do-it-yourself projects like this around the house. I put out lots of videos weekly, try to. Anyway, thanks for being with me.